All right. Uh, Thank you. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everybody. My name is Neeraj Kumar. Uh, I'm lead cloud architect. I'm also an MCT, Microsoft Certified Trainer. And today in Azure Talk, this is an online session that we have been doing for a while now. I think we have conducted more than 23 online sessions on Azure Talk. Today we are going to talk about BCDR, which is Business Continuity and DR, Disaster Recovery, with the help of Azure Site Recovery. I'm also joined by today by two of our Azure Talk core group members, Vivek Mishra, who is going to assist me with the demo part, and also he will help us answer any questions and answers along with other members on this team. So he is cloud migration and automation specialist, works for Accenture. Then I'm also joined by Lalit Rawat, who's going to also help us with any question and answer along with other members, including Amit Charungo. So Lalit, he's manager IT cloud, and he works for Bajaj Finserv. Today we'll talk about business continuity and disaster recovery plan. With that, I will take a minute to talk about our Azure Talk group. So we have a Azure Talk Telegram group, which is a Azure community group. So if you're not part of that group, please feel free to join. If you have any questions on Azure, you can post those questions there, and we will be more than happy to answer those questions for you. And if you want to be part of these sessions and you want to receive the invite, regular invite, please make sure that you take a point to hit our website www.cloudeasy.com and then register yourself to our portal. So that way you will be part of our database and you will receive a weekly invite for our sessions. So with that, I will straight away get into the agenda. This is the BCDR using Azure Site Recovery is a really big topic, and what are we going to do is we will cover BCDR in multiple sessions. So today this is going to be the first session, but in coming weeks we'll have multiple sessions to cover each and every scenario of business continuity and disaster recovery using Azure Site Recovery. So with that, I will get into the agenda. The agenda that we are going to talk about is what is business continuity and disaster recovery. So what importance it plays and why you should have a BCDR strategy for any of your application, right? And just one housekeeping item, I have muted all the participants, so if you have any question, please type those questions into your chat window and we will take those questions. Or in case you want to speak up, in that case, just type in chat and I'll unmute yourself. So just to make sure that we have the highest quality of recording and the session goes on, in right way, we have muted all the participants. So I apologize for that in advance, but just to make sure that we maintain the quality, we had to do that. So if you have any question, please do type in the chat. And or if you want to share your inputs, anything on our session, please do so. You just type in the chat and I will unmute yourself. For that, I'll come back to the agenda. So in terms of what is business continuity and disaster recovery, we'll talk about BCDR and why it is important, and what components BCDR has in terms of Azure. So what components you can leverage from Azure. So Azure offers you different services which can help you plan or create a plan for business continuity or DR plan per se. So we'll talk about that. So some of the services that we are certainly going to talk about is Azure Paired Region, what it is and how it helps you to design a solution which is highly available and resilient to any region failure. We'll also talk about Availability Zone, which is a new feature which Microsoft has released. It's in public preview. So, we'll talk about availability zone. We'll touch upon that. Then we will move on to Azure Site Recovery. So Azure Site Recovery using, ASR, which is Microsoft solution services from Azure, which helps you to offer, like, set up your DR, or it also helps you to migrate your VM from on-prem into Azure. So we'll touch upon that. And that's where we'll get into the demo section of Azure Site Recovery, and we will cover one of the scenario today, and then subsequently in next sessions we will cover the other scenarios. But today we'll restrict ourselves to Azure Site Recovery, and then we'll talk about Azure Backup, not in this session, but in future sessions. But in nutshell, we are going to cover, like, all these topics, including Azure Site Recovery and Azure Backup. But Azure Backup we'll cover in future sessions. Then finally, we'll also have a Q&A session where, like, you can ask your questions and answers, and you can continue typing your questions and answer. And then we'll have demo where, like, I will be joined by Vivek Mishra and Lalit Rawat and other team members who will help us and with the demo of Azure Site Recovery. With that, I'll move on to the next slide. So first thing first, right? So even before we start, we talk about ASR. ASR is a service from Azure. We need to understand what problem ASR solves for us. So the problem that ASR helps us to solve, or any solution that we look for, is business continuity and disaster recovery, BCDR. So what is BCDR? BCDR is a plan. You decide, you create your own plan to make sure that your data, your application, or your workload is available when there is an outage. So an outage of your data center. So let's say you have multiple data centers. Why do we go for multiple data centers? So that if there is an outage in one data center, we can always fail over, or we can utilize the services from other data centers. So, like, having multi-data center strategy helps you to make sure that your application and your business and IT operations up and running even in case of outage, if the entire region is down, the entire location is down, right? And that could be like flood, it could be war, it could be riot, it could be anything and everything. So any application that we develop, you should have a BCDR plan, depending on what kind of application it is. If it is really critical, you will certainly need a BCDR plan. If it's not critical, it's generally considered not really a candidate for backup or disaster recovery. In that case, probably you can skip BCDR plan. But if you're talking about any critical application, you must have a business continuity and disaster recovery plan. So your BCDR plan can be at application level, or it can be at the entire data center level too. So you can say that, okay, I have one data center which is sitting on-prem, and then I want to make sure that if something happens to that data center, I can use Azure as a my business continuity or a DR location. So Microsoft does offer you that services. So we'll talk about how you can really build your or create your own BCDR plan. Okay, so with any a backup or any business continuity plan that you decide or design, that or any DR plan that you basically create, will revolve around two key components. One is RPO, that is called recovery point objective, and then another one is a RTO, which is recovery time objective. Now these two terms are like very popular terms, which probably anybody who has worked in data center design or solutioning field, they are very much aware. But if you're coming from a general background, and if I have not really touched upon this, so I will just take a minute to define these terms for you. Right. So RPO is recovery point objective. So that defines at till what point of time of your application will be recoverable. So in terms of the data. So for example, let's say if you have a database and if you have a web server, so the recovery point objective helps you determine that, okay, I can recover data up to 5 minutes from the time of the failure. So that is called recovery point objective. So in that case, what will happen, any commit which has happened prior to 5 minutes prior to the failure, you will be able to recover that. So that is called a recovery point objective. That is up to which point in time of your data you can recover. So that is your recovery point objective. Now, depending on what kind of application you have, what kind of business continuity assessment you have done for your application, and what was the RPO that you have agreed upon for your application, you will design your solution based on those, right? So that's recovery point objective. Then we have recovery time objective. RTO is what helps you to to make sure that how do we, okay, we have decided that we will reach to 5 minutes of RPO, but how much time it will take me to really up and running into the the DR center. So how much time that's going to take the failover. So for example, if there is a failure, we determine, okay, there's a failure. Now from the point of the failure till the time you put in your servers, or you put in your secondary data center up and running, that time between the failure and between the active secondary side is called RTO, recovery time objective. That means how much time it you have to recover and in secondary data center or in Azure. So that is called recovery time object. So recovery point objective is from the data perspective, till what point in time of data that you want to recover. Recovery time objective is how quickly you want to recover. Okay, so these two terminologies, this is where everything will revolve around. All your DR plan or business continuity plan will revolve around this RPO and RTO. And there is slight difference between business continuity and DR plan, but business continuity DR talks at the technology level, where we say, okay, I have DR plan for SQL, or I have DR plan for application, whereas business continuity not only talks about DR but also talks about the operations, what will happen, who will take over the roles of IT operations in case of failure, disaster, and all. It goes more operation side plus the technology. So business continuity is much more than just being a technology side. So that's the difference between business continuity and DR. But in general, we use this term interchangeably. Business continuity, and that's why you say business continuity and disaster recovery. All right. So any plan that you create, again, it's on RPO and RTO. So RPO is recovery point objective, point in time of data, till what point in time you want to recover. RTO is how quickly you want to recover. Depending on what's your RPO and RTO, your cost can go up. Your RPO, the lesser RPO that you have, the aggressive RPO you have, the more money you have to shell out. And if you have more time for your RPO, more time of RTO, in that case, probably you have to shell out less money. So depending on what's your cost, what's your RPO, and what's your RTO, you will have to pick and choose different kind of services, for designing your DR solution or BCDR solution. With that, I'll move on to the services that Microsoft offers, or Microsoft Azure offers you, because we talked about business continuity DR in a general, but then what are the different tools which Microsoft has to offer you, which can satisfy your critical business continuity and DR requirement. So the first one is Microsoft offers you Azure region. All of us, we know Azure region. So Azure has a paired region. I'll talk more about that. So Azure paired region lets you pick your region in a way that if something happened to one region, Microsoft will fail over to other region. We'll also talk about availability zone, which provides you DR capability within the same region. So which is in public preview. It's not available in all the regions. It's only available in 2 regions. So we'll also talk about that. Then we'll talk about Azure Site Recovery, ASR. ASR is the technology which enables the BCDR for disaster recovery or migration activity. You can use Azure Site Recovery. Then finally, as I said, Azure Backup we'll cover in future session, where you can take a backup of your VM and store it in Recovery Services Vault, or you can store it for restore. So anything at the VM level, if something happens, you can restore it using Azure Backup. So with that, I will move on to the next slide, which talks about Azure paired region. So if you have worked with Azure in past, or if you know about the services that usually if you go and check out the services of any cloud provider, be it in any Azure region. So before I move on, I see some questions on the chat. I'm hoping that my team members are able to answer. But there's a question from Ruxar. What is minimum possible RPO RTO? So well, Ruxar, that's very subjective, and you have to work with your application team to understand what's their requirement, and based on that, you have to design. There may be some technical limitations, so some of these services may support an RPO up to minutes. That's also possible, and there's some services which may not support. So based on that, you have to design your solution. So there is no hard and fast guidance around RPO and RTO. It will depend on what kind of tier of application you have. Usually organization will categorize their, platinum tier, gold tier, bronze tier, those kind of application, and every application will have their own RPO and RTO. So that's, very organization specific. Okay. So I hope I answered your question. So now coming back to Azure paired region. So any Azure region that today you build any services, you have Azure regions. Every region has a paired region. So what that means, before even I get into the region, so how Microsoft has laid out their physical infrastructure or the data center is that you have geography. So within one geography, so you have Asia is one geography, you have India as another geography, and then you have Canada as another geography. Within each geography they will have at least two regions. So that is also called Azure regions. So like you have geography, then within geography you have multiple regions. Now these regions are paired with each other. So for example, if I look at India. India has three regions. So their paired region is Central India and South India. So that means if something happens at Microsoft level, let's say Central India is based in Chennai, and Central India is based in Pune, and South India is based in Chennai. Now if something happened in Pune data center of Microsoft, the entire Pune region is down because of some uh, uh, flood situation, some outages, or like it could be any civil rights or any kind of problem that the entire region is down. What Microsoft is going to do is they will fail over all their workload, including VM, storage, everything into the paired region, which is South India, which is Chennai. So now this helps you to design a solution. If anything happens into this particular region, and if it is down, you can always, Microsoft will fail over the data into this South India or the paired region. So whenever you are designing your solution, which requires really a business continuity plan, make sure that your component of the secondary site you choose between the paired region. Now you have choice of using Central India and Western India, which is Mumbai. But remember, those are not paid. So in case there is a disaster, your storage account will not fail over and you will have challenge. So that's why it's very important to keep in mind that when you're designing a solution, especially with business continuity, keeping business continuity, or I would start using DR as a plan in your mind, please make sure that you're using the paired region, and every region has a paired region, and almost all the geography will have a paired region within the same country, except in case of Asia, I mean that it will be within the same geography, except that we have Brazil. So Brazil has only one region, which is in Sao Paulo. The Brazil's paired region is in America South. So that's the only exception. Otherwise, all the paired region will be in the same geography. So you have geography, then within that you have multiple regions, at least two regions, and within the region you have these data centers. Now within the data center, that's where Microsoft has got. You have now availability zones. So we'll talk about availability zones. So, but in nutshell, the hierarchy is you have geography, you have regions, and then within the regions you have you have regional pairs. So like you have Central India and South India, they are the paired region, and then within those regional pairs is basically you have your regions, and within the regions you have data center. Now these data centers is further divided into what's called availability zones, which we'll talk about more, and they are segregated from the floodplain perspective. So in terms of when you're designing a solution, please make sure that you're using paired region concept. Otherwise, you will run into problem if the entire region is done from Microsoft perspective. So that's in nutshell what is Azure paired region. Now, so there's a question I see that ATM, yeah, so ATM is fine. Now the question is, will failover to paired region will make impact performance on connectivity? It may not, depending on, like, if I'm assuming if you have hosted your workload in one geography, let's say India geography, you have same amount of connectivity, right? Same bandwidth probably connectivity, whether you connect to Pune or you connect to Chennai. Since you are in the same geography, you may not have performance issue. But for example, if you are in case of Brazil, where the paired region is in America, probably you will see some performance issue depending on where the user is based out of. But usually you should not see performance impact. Okay, so with that, I will move on to the next slide. So the next slide is Azure Availability Zone. So this Azure Availability Zone is still in preview. Okay, and in terms of the availability, so we talked about geography, we talked about the paired region. So in one geography you have multiple regions, minimum two, and then you can have maximum. In case of US geography, we have more than, I think it's six uh, regions we have. And then within each region you have now something called availability zone. So now availability zone, you can understand it as a cluster of data centers. So you can have one or multiple data centers in the same Azure region. So basically the availability zone gives you a DR from the locality perspective. So now it could be, usually the distance between one availability zone and another is around 50 miles. And they will belong to different floodplains. So that means that if one area is flooded, in that case the other one shouldn't get flooded, because there are different floodplain. That's one. So within the region itself, earlier Microsoft didn't had an option of DR within the region, because availability zone was not available, whereas this was offered as a service in the case of other competitor cloud providers like AWS had this concept, Google Cloud had this concept, but it was not there with Microsoft. But what Microsoft had it, you could use your availability set, or you can also make sure that that it stays within the same data, or you have also had the zone concept for storage, but not certainly for other like for VMs and for the load balancers. You didn't have that option. Now with this Azure availability zone, it's available, and it is still in public preview, as I said. But now what you can do is you can achieve DR even within the region. So the way it is separated out is, it's a separate floodplain, it's a separate power source and network and cooling unit. So that means it's entirely separate. It could be one building, and one availability zone can have multiple data center clustered. It could be in one building, another could be in another building. That's possible, right? So that's how availability zone is. But just to understand, make sure that from the DR perspective, you take the DR, you start from the your Azure paired region, so that gives you DR within a geography, and you go from one region to another region. Now you come down one level further down, and within the region you achieve high availability, not high availability, but the DR using the availability zone concept. Today availability zone is only available in two regions, East US 2 and West Europe. As I said, it's still in public preview. So in terms of what all services are supported, it supports Linux and Windows VM. So now you can have your Linux and Windows VM across the availability zone. So what you can do is, let's say if it's a really critical workload, so you can have one web app on one availability zone, another web app on another availability zone. So that way you create a highly available solution within the same region using availability zone. It also supports the scale set. So in case you decide to put up your own scale set, some of the VMs could be in one availability zone, some of the could be in another VM in another availability set. So that also you can use. It supports managed disk. And it also supports load balancers. These are the services that is supported today for availability zone. Okay.
Neeraj, Lalit here. One
Yeah,
question.
yeah.
Like, if it is supporting that all those managed disk and the load balancers, so those configuration would be automatically replicated within the Azure regions. So
Uh,
we
so
can choose the
so
availability zone.
this is not Azure regions, right? So this is we are talking about within the same region.
Same
So
region, yeah.
yeah. So for them, like for example, it is internal load balancer, right? If it is internal
Yeah.
load balancer, this load balancer will be resolved within the Azure region, and availability zone is within the region. So we are covered there. But if you're going across the region, then you're talking about, you know, external load balancer, you're talking about Azure Traffic Manager, or anything else. But this is within the same region availability zone.
Yeah. I got it. Thank you.
Yep. All right, so well, I'll move on to the next slide. And if you have any question, probably after this we'll have a Q&A session where I'll let everybody speak. But just keep typing your question, and I have all my team members ready to answer your questions. Uh, So with that, now we will move into very specific services of which is Azure Recovery Services. So Azure Recovery Services helps you to create a BCDR strategy for you, for your organization, for your application. And Azure Recovery Services has two offering that they offer you. One is Site Recovery Services. It's also called Azure Site Recovery. So basically, you use site recovery to replicate your workload, which means VMs or even physical servers also. So you can replicate your VM running on-prem into Azure, or you can also replicate your physical servers. It not only that it replicates from on-prem into Azure, but you can also replicate between one on-prem data center and another on-prem data center. That's also possible. And we'll look into all those supported scenarios for ASR. In fact, we will have future sessions where we'll cover each and every scenario for Azure Site Recovery. All right. The second service, which probably is there as a part of this offering is backup services. So basically, it is to, you want to take a backup of your VM running on Windows or Linux, so you can use backup services. So you have site recovery, which is ASR, which is to replicate the workloads, and then you have backup services. Backup services is to back up the data on your VM, so you can back that up into a backup vault. So we'll also cover backup vault, but not today, maybe in future sessions. So we will concentrate more on ASR. So with ASR, you can use ASR for your business continuity or for DR in following scenarios. So some of the scenarios that probably you can think about is today Microsoft offers you Azure to Azure DR. So you can have DR scenario. Let's say if you want to make sure that one Azure region is down, you don't have to do anything manual. So you can utilize ASR. It supports failover and a failback from Azure to Azure region. So you can replicate your VM from Azure South Central to Azure North Central. You can, as a part of this ASR, you can do that. And this is still in public preview, Azure to Azure DR, but this is really good. A lot of customers have demanded that, we want our own, because Microsoft does provide you paired region, but that requires you to manually set up your VM. So your storage account will get replicated, but manual steps does require you to install the create the VM instance and all those, and then attach to the existing storage account which has failed over to the paired region. Now that does require a lot of work, and that requires a lot of planning. So what Microsoft said, okay, what we can do is we can start to offer an Azure to Azure DR using Azure Site Recovery. So that's what we will cover in today's demo, and we will concentrate more on that, and then subsequently we'll talk about others also. The second scenario is on-prem to Azure. So you have, your own data center. You have a couple of data centers that you have, and then you want to use, Azure as your DR location. So you can do that. So basically, Microsoft does offer that support. So from on-prem to Azure DR, you can do that. So you can have your Hyper-V workload running on-prem that can be replicated into Azure. You can have VMware virtual workload running on-prem, which can be replicated to Azure, or you can have your physical servers, running on-prem can be replicated to Azure. So that's second offering from Microsoft. Or ASR supports that scenario. The third scenario is where you use on-prem to on-prem. So basically you have one data center in, let's say, in Europe, another data center in let's say in US, and you want to replicate between these two. Let's say you have Hyper-V, you can set up those on-prem to on-prem DR, and you can replicate your workloads, Hyper-V workloads, from one data center to another data center, and vice versa. Similarly, it also supports Hyper-V replication, it supports VMware replication, and it also supports Hyper-V along with the SCVMM, so that you can do between those, right? And from the third option, sorry, not the third, but in the fourth one, the third one I covered. The fourth one is multi-cloud to Azure migration. Now, this means that let's say you have some workload running on AWS or Google Cloud, and you decided that I want to move from AWS to Azure, so you can use Azure Site Recovery for that. So in case there is any problem, and you decided that, okay, now I'm running my workload in AWS, but now my company has a strategic goal, or Azure is more suited because I'm a Microsoft shop and I run a lot of Microsoft workloads. So for us, it makes sense to move to Azure. You can use Azure Site Recovery to migrate from AWS to Azure. So that also you can use it. So with that, I'll move on to the next slide. Anybody wants to add any points? So Amit or Lalit, please feel free to do so. You are presenters, so probably you can unmute yourself and talk. Or Uday, anybody? Okay.
Yep. So here's one question that Chetan has asked, that even Azure will support the request for SQL Server. Uh, I would like to request Neeraj, you can answer this question, that does
Sure.
ASR support SQL Server and IAS
Yeah.
replicated to DR? It supports the VM, that I'm aware of
Lalit,
that, even with the SQL servers, right? Yeah,
yeah,
please.
Lalit, I did just answer this question for Chetan. It is application aware, and not only SQL but SharePoint and Dynamics and even Active Directory. It's all there, right? So it's quite pretty much application aware and does support SQL as well. It's aware of SQL for application.
Thanks, Amit. Awesome.
All right.
And just to add the one more point, it's an application aware, but say more on an application aware, I would say Azure Site Recovery supports. Now you can go and select, instead of a VM of a SQL, you can select the instance or the DB instance of the SQL which is running inside. So you can directly take, now you don't need to take the entire VM. You can take, that's going to announce. So the couple of announcement will be coming. So that is also going to support, because we have given a lot of feedbacks to Microsoft. It's going to take on a database level. So that supports Azure VMs, the Azure IaaS VMs, SQL instance level.
Yeah. All right.
Yeah.
So thank you, Uday and Amit, to adding your points. So that's really, I really appreciate it. So with that, let's move on to what you can achieve with the site recovery, or ASR in a nutshell. So using Azure Site Recovery, you can deploy a BCDR solution, which we talked about. You can replicate your Azure VM. So one Azure VM sitting in one region can be replicated to another one, that you can do. Plus, you can also replicate your on-premise VM. So if you have VM running on Hyper-V, or you're running on AWS, not AWS, ESXi, or VMware, you can replicate that to an offsite software. That means you can replicate to another data center. That's also a possibility. You can replicate your on-prem virtual machines into Azure. So that's second option is also there. Plus, you can replicate any kind of workload. That it doesn't only restrict it to VM, but you can also restrict it. You can also replicate your physical servers also. So if you have any physical servers on-prem, you want to replicate to Azure, you can do that. It will help you to with RTO and RPO. So as I said, in terms of the RPO, some of the metrics that I know, it supports the delta up to 30 seconds. So it can it keeps data as current as up to 30 seconds. But depending on what kind of application, you can look at the technical capability of ASR. So but in terms of it does offer very good RPO, and it can meet most of the RPO requirement from the customer. But not only ASR, you can also use other BCDR technologies which comes at application layer. For example, if you're using SQL, you can use always on, which is another business DR technology. For similarly for DAG, you can use Exchange for database availability group. So on top of that, you also have your Azure Site Recovery. So with the combination of these technologies, you can achieve your intended or defined RTO and RPO. Then, as Amit answered you, this keeps an app consistent failover. So that means, it does support. It has a list of supported applications. So it's app consistent. SharePoint is certainly there. Dynamic is already there. SQL is there. Active Directory is there. Whole list of application is there. So if you're running any kind of this workload, this provides you that app consistency failover. You can do a test without disruption. That means you have a test failover. So instead of actual failover, you can do the test failover. So whenever you need to do the testing, so any backup plan that you have, or every once a year we do that to make sure that our auditor is happy and make sure that our services is capable of failing over. So you can do a test failover. So ASR does offer you a test failover, wherein it doesn't it will fail over, but it will totally isolated and it doesn't interfere with the production. You can create your own recovery plan. So recovery plan is where there was a question about automation. So you can create your own automation scripts, as in once I failed over, what all need to be done. DNS has to be configured and all those settings. So you can put as a recovery plan so that you can do that. And then you can manage your network settings. So in terms of VNet, subnet, and in the IP blocks, all those can be managed. You can also configure, if you really want to integrate with any kind of automation, you can also do that. But there is limited support for automation, but it's going to enhance soon. All right. So with that, I will move on to the next slide. So this is where Azure to Azure ASR architecture. So basically, how replication or how the DR takes place between Azure one region to another region. So if you look at it, there are certain components, there are certain architecture that we have put in, and by the way, this credit all goes to Microsoft. So I have borrowed a lot of stuff from Microsoft, and this graphic is certainly from Microsoft. So in terms of your components that forms as a part of your ASR architecture, certainly you will have your VM. For sure, without VM, that's the main component that basically will participate in your DR activity or your business continuity, because those are the resources, some of the resources that you have. Then you have your Azure virtual machine, which you also have. These VMs will be part of an availability set. So that certainly these are some of the resources. They will be part of a VNet. They will be part of a subnet. So these are the things, right? So those are the key component of that. Well, you do the DR. Plus, all these VMs will have their VHD stored inside your storage account. So that's where you store your VHD. That's your data disk. That's where it goes, the OS disk. Then, this is your base infrastructure, right? So when you talk about the base infrastructure, you have VNet, you have subnet, you have VM, and then you have your storage account where the VHD is stored, and then you obviously. This has to be replicated to the other region. So basically, the component which really helps you with this, Azure to Azure is called Site Recovery Extension Mobility Service. So this is an agent which get installed if you try to enable Azure to Azure ASR, and we will see that in the demo. That will install a small extension on your VM running in Azure. So basically, that's the agent. Basically, what it will do, it will trap all the write and write requests, basically, any delta which is coming, and then it can it it takes those delta and then it syncs it up to the other region. Now, when I say other region, it doesn't directly go and try to sync the data. No, it doesn't happen like that. So basically, what happens? You have a middleman in between. So it is also called cache data storage account. So any changes which is going to happen, the I got muted. Can you hear me now? Okay, all right, thank you. Sorry, somebody muted me. All right, so okay, so presentation is not available. Let me share the screen once again. Hold on.
Sure.
Okay, so I'm sharing it once again. Hopefully you can see now. All right, perfect. I'm really sorry and I apologize. There's some network problem. But okay, so in terms of the architecture, as I said, you have all your VMs on all your resources, and then you have this mobility extension which gets site recovery mobility extension which gets installed on the VM. That agent is going to trap any request that's coming in, any write request, and then it will proxy or it moreover works as a shadow services, and that it will pass on the data to the delta to your a parking spot. This is a parking lot where it temporarily stores those delta, and from there it will flow over to the storage account. So that's how the replication works. So that's one aspect of that. So any when you create this plan, you will have your target resource group. So like one-to-one matching, you will have a target resource group where this services will get created in case of you fail over. Then you have target virtual network. So like this VNet you can see, and you can say VNet-ASR, but you can do that. So that's by default it will create for you. Then it will also create a subnet. It will create corresponding availability set for you, so that in case we fail over, all this will come over to this location and we'll have the mirror replica of the exact region. So that we can do. So cache storage account, as I said, cache storage account is the parking lot where we take the delta and then we put it there, and from there it flows to the target storage account. So you have target storage account, and then you have target availability set. So basically availability set is where all your VM is highly available, and it's make sure that it is it's not into the single fault domain. So basically it will be put across multiple fault domains. So that's the availability set is all about. So this is in nutshell the architecture of ASR from Azure to Azure. I also have a graphics in next page which talks more about in general the whole concept, and it will show you how really it works. So you have by default you will have your source environment, right? So anybody will have a VNet, will have a subnet, will have virtual machine, will have disk inside a storage account. So that's what consists of your source environment. Then once you have the source environment, then you decided that, okay, now I should have my BCDR for Azure to Azure region. In that case, you'll have to plan and you'll have to have a target environment. So that's when you will have this scenario wherein you have the source environment on the left side, and then you have target environment, which is almost the mirror within a storage account. So this is your cache storage account, this is your target storage account, this is your target resource group, this is your target VNet, and then target subnet, and target availability set. So one-to-one mapping you will have. Then once this is the first step that happens, then after that you will start the replication. The moment you set the replication, you will have your site recovery extension mobility install, and then the your cache data or cache storage account, and it will start replicating with the target storage account. So that's the stage of continuous replication. So any changes you are making here or here, it's going and replicating to this data, and from there it's going, and this is continuous. It's going on for until you stop it, until you break it. So okay, so now we had my source environment, we had a target environment, they are in sync using ASR, and it's replicating the storage account. Basically, storage account is what's getting replicated for you in the background. Then what's next? Now after this, the next stage will come. A day comes that you get to know that, okay, the entire region is down. For any region, it could be Microsoft region or your some other challenges with network outage. For example, there is a network outage and you cannot really access this region. So in that case, probably you have to fail over. So when you fail over, this region will be marked as down, and this will become your active site. So secondary will become your active site, and then all your resources, all your VMs will be up and running there. So that is called failover. Now, you initiate the failover in case of disaster recovery, and once the disaster is over, and let's say your power outage was fixed, or your the any civil unrest was there, that that's being taken care of by the government, and now you want to fail back. So you have failover when you move from primary to secondary site. That's called failover. And then you fail back, once your primary site is up and running, you come back and fail back. So you can do failover and fail back both with this ASR. So again, this is Azure to Azure ASR architecture, and this is still in preview. So just keep that in mind. But I think it is in preview for quite a while, and I'm hoping that it will be soon in GA. I think it's more than 2 months, if I'm not mistaken. So
Right.
yeah, sorry. Yeah, so with that, we'll get into the demo, and I will open the floor for any questions. So I'm going to unmute all the participants. So if you have any questions, please feel free to unmute yourself and ask those questions. And with that, I will hand over, the baton to Vivek to start sharing his desktop. Vivek, you can go ahead and share your desktop for the last.
Thank you, Neeraj.
You're welcome.
Okay.
So I'll stop sharing so that you can start sharing.
Neeraj, Rukhsar here. So what is the difference between multi-region deployment? Because to achieve DR, previously we do the multi-region deployments. Now the ASR service is available. So it is easily achievable right now, correct?
See,
I want to confirm.
yeah, so for ASR and multi-region, you're talking about Azure Traffic Manager. So that's you use a combination of both to achieve this. So for example, if you're using a PaaS solution, right? It's active. So you're talking about Azure Traffic Manager is active. Okay, whereas this ASR is active passive, so that you save money.
No, I'm talking about active passive. It might be possible my primary region is active, but on the failure, because of the failure in the first region, automatically the endpoint available for the second region.
Yeah, you can achieve that from the application perspective, but here we're talking about the entire infrastructure, and from that perspective. So I you can use a combination of ASR and also highly available multi-region solution, which we use Azure Traffic Manager. Both should be used. So but in case of Azure Traffic Manager that you use, though it's active passive, but still you have to provision those resources back up there, right? And those resources have to be at least in the a passive mode. But in case of Azure Site Recovery, you don't have any resources. You're just paying for the storage. That's it. So your VHD is getting replicated, but you don't have any VM, you don't have any compute, you don't have anything. And in only
Okay.
case of failover, you will start paying for that and for that period of time.
And Neeraj, I have one more question regarding the same failover Azure to Azure region. So does RTO RPO applies here?
Yep.
Yeah, it does, right?
Okay. I mean, who will decide? I mean, like, I mean, pricing will be depending on RTO RPO, right?
No, no,
So,
no, no, no. It's not. They don't vary the RTO and RPO for you. You will have to, create your own recovery plan in a way that you can, achieve your RTO. RTO and RPO will not come from Microsoft. RTO and RPO will come from application owner, from business owner, or your stakeholders. They will decide how much RTO and how much RPO you require, and based on that,
Uh,
you will choose the technology.
so Neeraj, Chaitanya,
Okay.
am I audible?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. When we are saying the RPO RTO, it would be taken care by. It's a depends on the Microsoft or something, because I think PaaS services Microsoft has a backend network which syncs the database or whatever application what it does. But when we are saying a VM base, then it would be the customer's network or a express route or a VPN tunnel. It
No,
depends
no,
on
no,
that, right?
no. Sorry. I didn't mean to say that. I meant to say that every technology offers you a technical RTO, where Microsoft says that they claim ASR is up to 30 second is RPO that they can offer. But that 30-second is not for every application. So you'll have to look into specifics of those. And plus, you will have to map that against the RPO and RTO requests coming from your organization for your application, right? How critical is that?
Right.
So, for
Right.
example, I talked about that you can use the RPO or RTO provided by the ASR, or plus you also on top of that you club it with the Azure's SQL always on availability group, which is also another DR capability for application layer. Exchange has its own DR capability, so you can use a combination to achieve your end objective.
Okay.
Basically, just to add what Neeraj said, this is Amit. So just what Neeraj said is that there are two layers here. One is at the Azure level where you are deciding on whatever you mapped will be mapping with your own RTO. Secondly, you can achieve it at the application layer also, right? Like we have DAG, or probably in case of SQL always on is there, right? So you have to differentiate the two, and probably in the planning itself you will have to introduce these factors to decide on if one is not enough, how the other one would help to achieve the RTO and RPO that you were looking at. So it'll just like a backup. At times when you have a backup of SQL Server, or probably you are backing up the entire VM. At the same time, you have a backup of your own SQL as well, right? So you utilize both the layers to achieve the maximum that you're trying to do, right? So this is how it will be. Both the layers it will be there.
Yeah. So you use the
Okay.
combination of both, to achieve that.
Okay.
With that, let's get back to the lab. So sorry, and we'll take the question. But so
Yeah.
Vivek is going to talk about how to set up DR using ASR between two Azure regions. So, and he will also show us the demo.
Hello everyone. We have here the few VMs. Like one is the ATSR demo, that is the using the managed disk, and the two more VM, that is VM1 and VM2. First, we check the managed disk. We can go to the disaster recovery preview, as you saw.
So mainly what we have done is, in order to help save some time, we already have certain VM which is already part and configured running as a part of this demo. And uh, and then we are trying to set up this ASR application. So that's what I guess.
So here you can see that currently Azure to Azure not supported the managed disk. It's only supported by the storage account and managed disk.
Yeah, so that's one good point. That's probably that's what I think Vivek wanted to show us, is that ASR doesn't support managed disk. So if you have any workload running on managed disk, you cannot use Azure to Azure DR, right? But if you have your VM, if you have your VHD, which is in unmanaged, which is in a regular storage account, then in that case you can use ASR.
Okay, how we enable the replication from the Azure VM? Like there is a two option. First option, you can use the single click deployment. That is a disaster recovery preview in the in the VM blade. You can just go to the VM blade and then go to the disaster recovery preview. And here in just single click, you can enable the replication. You need to select the few things like your target region. Like this VM is deployed in the East US, so it's only showing the America location. Like it's totally depend upon the geo cluster. So here you cannot see the region like Korea, India, or any other region. Only the US region is there. And then in the target resource group, you can select your resource group. If uh, you already need to create a resource group and availability set. Here the one thing, like if your VM is a part of availability set, then only you can deploy your VM in select the availability set. If it is not a part of a availability set, then you cannot fail over your VM in the availability set. And then you need to select your virtual network, which virtual network you want to select.
So
And
you
the next,
remember, yeah, you remember
yeah,
that we talked about the architecture, right? So the architecture, if you remember, we had the source resource group and we have a target resource group. So this is where you specify your target resource group. Then we had target availability set. This is where you specify your target availability set. Then we had, the virtual network and subnet. So all those things, you can pick and choose here. So you have source and you have target. Go ahead.
and also the source storage account and target storage account and the cache storage. Like already Neeraj explained about the cache storage, how it's work. It is the same location where your VM is deployed. If your VM is in the East US location, then the cache storage also in the East US location. And again, you need to select the replication setting. Like you need to select.
Sorry, Vivek, I muted you. Can you talk? Hello?
Yep.
Sorry.
Hello.
Yeah,
Okay.
there was noise, so I had
Okay.
to mute people.
Okay. So you can select here the replication policy. By default, it's create the new replication policy, and in new replication policy, it's taking the retention of 24 hour, and your app consistency is approx 4 hour. So you click here, and it will enable the replication. And another way is you can go to the recovery services vault.
So Vivek, just one point, if you can go back to the VM Blade and
Okay.
let's review the one-click deployment. If you can talk about, one-click deployment a little bit more to give idea to audience, that will help. So, just, what Microsoft has done earlier, if you had to really set up your Azure Site Recovery and replication, you had to go through a set of steps using ASR and then, decide on which, Vivek will show. But with the new offering, what Microsoft has done, they're saying one-click deployment, which is the model that you're seeing right now, and you can enable that at at the disk level, I mean at the VM level. So just in come into the VM, and from there just with one click, when I say one click, just select that option, and from here itself single blade you can specify that. So this mode of deployment is called single click deployment, right? And so this is where Vivek has shown you all the options. Now, what Vivek is going to show you next is the typical, which is more for complex kind of environment, and not just at the VM level, but at the the entire infrastructure. You want to do that. In that case, you will use the regular ASR method of using through recovery services board.
Okay. Thanks, Neeraj. Like here you need to create a vault. Like before creating a vault, make sure where is the your VM is running. If your VM is running in the East US location, you need to deploy your vault in some another region, because if you deploy the vault and the VM in the same region, then you cannot protect your VM using the ASR. Azure to Azure ASR because it's limitation, like you cannot prevent your VM with the same location. You need to select another region
Oh yeah.
for protection.
Yeah, so that's a very good point, right? So when you are doing it this ASR, remember we said paired region. So there is no point of doing an ASR within the same region, and Microsoft will not let you do that. So they will restrict you from doing that. So you'll have to select another region. It could be a paired region or it could be non-paired region. But as I said, if you're smart and you're designing a solution which is resilient, you will always select a paired region for your application.
Neeraj, I was just wanted to add here one more thing. Why Microsoft is not supporting within the region? Because if something is goes wrong with this region and probably your network or something is not working, so for the future perspective, Microsoft has enabled this feature and providing you the ability to just go ahead and create the failover into the different region, how we are doing into the the regions which is in South India, the grouping which Neeraj has already shown. One is in Central India and one is in South India. The similar concept has in the site recovery as well. So even though if you're going and migrating those VMs or larger environments, so you have the more critical applications where Microsoft has to, deviate their SLAs and they wanted to, you will be able to migrate all the things to the different regions. So you have to create the site recovery vault to the different regions, which will help you a lot to, manage both the sites, how you're managing in the on premises.
Correct. Yeah. So with that, so then what Vivek is showing is he demonstrated the one-click, demo. Now he's showing the regular where you will first create a recovery service vault, and then from there on, and make sure that you're creating recovery services vault in the target region, right, Vivek, where you want to replicate.
Yeah, right.
Okay.
So my VM is running in the East US location, and here I am selecting the location East US 2.
So that's the first step you will do. So you will create a recovery services vault if you're not using one-click deployment.
Yeah, right.
So here he is not following, this is Ranjit, he is not following the paired region concept, right? Because East US, I believe it would be West is the paired region, right? So it is not following the rule.
Yeah, probably he may not be, but that's okay. Just for the demo purpose, we're doing it.
Actually, the problem is this subscription has some location limitation, so that's why I'm selecting the East US 2.
You remember, right now the IS, this is still in public preview, so not all the region have this available. So that's why, we're selecting those regions.
Neeraj, Chetan here.
Yeah, Chetan.
One question on the what we are saying is when we are creating a recovery site vaults, right? We are adding this at the DR location. So that means
Sorry, if you're
if I
not
want,
speaking, please keep yourself mute. Sorry.
am I audible?
Yeah, Chetan, you're audible. I was talking about somebody else. So it's like Avinash. So let me unmute it. Yeah, go ahead.
So my question was, we are creating a this is a recovery site vault. We are creating it at the location where the target is.
Correct.
Now, if I have my production is on, suppose in Pune, and that is central India, and I want to create this vault now in suppose Chennai.
Yeah, you will do. Yep.
What will happen when I have to have a fallback to my Pune location? So I have to create a vault service in Pune also for that when if a DR strikes, it goes to Chennai, and when I
Hello.
yeah.
Hello.
Yeah. What was my question clear?
Sorry, I lost connection for some time. Yeah, so no, you don't have to. So you talked about failover and you talked about failback. So, just at the point of the failover, when DR strike in Pune, you go to Chennai, and when from Chennai you come back to the primary, it is called failback. You don't need the ASR in, sorry, you don't need the recovery vault in the primary region.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, now we need to go to the getting started tab and then site recovery.
So basically, Vivek created an ASR, and then under the ASR, he's going to the property and getting started. You will see site recovery. You have two options, right? See backup and site recovery. We'll talk about backup not now, but in future, wherein we'll configure the backup. But right now, you come into the site recovery, and then yeah, go ahead, Vivek.
Then go to the prepare infra. Like here the option, you can see the Azure preview and on-premises. If you go to the Azure, then you have two options, select to Azure, Azure to Azure. And there is an option on-premises that we talk about later session. You just click OK.
Yeah, so here you will say from where to where. So from where is Azure, and to is also Azure, because we are doing this
Azure.
demo from IS to IS, right? Doing the demo between Azure to Azure region. So that's why. When you click on prepare infrastructure, you will select Azure is the target and Azure is also the destination.
Here I need to select my source location and my VM is running in the East US location. Like what happened? I have deployed this vault in the East US2 location. If I select the source location East US2, then I'm getting the error. You cannot protect the VM from the same region.
Correct. So your recovery service vault has to be in the target region. And then once you have selected the source, you specify your, the source resource group from where you want to pick it up. Vivek, can you hear me? Did I lose you?
Chetan, yeah.
Yeah, Chetan.
Yeah, one question. Just sorry. Uh, what we are saying is okay. With the new ARM platform, what we have in Azure,
Mm-hmm.
do we have like with the paired when we are saying zones and all, right? We have a paired location regions and in Azure now.
Yeah.
Can we extend the resource group to my DR site? That means I have a same resource group which is created in one location, a region that is Pune, suppose, for that
Uh-huh.
matter example,
Uh-huh.
and that same resource group is extended to Chennai, so that whatever resources are there in that particular groups can be assigned. Maybe not the public IPs and all, but at least those storage groups which are others, GRS or LR, the storage accounts and all, safe storage accounts.
So see, your resource group is not when you create a resource group, it says uh, you know sorry, I was looking at the chat from Vivek.
Yes,
So
yes,
sorry. So when you create a resource group, it does you will select a location, but your resources can be from any location. You can add resources from any location. That's not a problem. Without any issues. So your resource group could belong to one location, but you can have resources from other locations also as a part of that resource group. Was that your question?
yeah, thanks.
So Vivek, I don't know, you are already presenter. Maybe you want to rejoin.
Yeah, I just rejoin the and
So
I
stop.
also seeing my screen
Yeah,
again.
stop the sharing. Stop the sharing.
There is no option sharing control or disable
Okay,
by
just hold
policy.
on, hold on, hold on, hold on.
Okay.
So let me say make an attendee, then I will make you. Oh, I see two, Vivek. Okay, now see that? Can you share your
Yeah,
desktop?
yeah, fine. Thank you. Uh, it, Let me know when you're able to see my screen.
Sure, it's loading. Yep, I can see it.
Okay, so we are in the source location is East US, and here you need to select a deployment model, like you want to deploy the classic or resource manager. So it's resource manager, and you need to select the resource. One thing here, like like already I'm seeing that in the chat. Yeah, resource group is not a location dependent. That's right. But here is the one thing. If I select the resource group, something like ABC, that is deployed in the East India location, and and I deploy my VM in resource group ABC, and the VM location is East US. In that case, I am not able to see my VM here, so I need to
Okay.
select the proper resource group.
Okay, so even if you select, okay, that's very good point. So, even if you select the resource group, but if you have VM, which is, in the same region where you have target is, you will not be able to see those VMs, right?
Uh, the thing is, like I created my resource group in the India location,
Yeah.
and in this using same resource group, I deployed one VM in the US location.
That's what I said. Yeah. So that's what I'm
Okay,
saying. So,
okay.
so I mean, if you have VM from multiple locations under one resource group, you would only see those VMs which is not in the same region as your, the source VM, or
Yeah.
sorry, the target VM, right? So you cannot select that. Yep. Shanmuga, I don't know. We can see the screen. How about others? Can you see screens?
Yeah, I'm able to view.
Yeah. So maybe Shanmuga, you can rejoin. All right. Let's go back to the session.
Okay. Here, here is my VM. It will list down your all VM that is in the same resource group and the same location.
Yeah.
So
So
you need to
basically, when
select.
you select the resource group, it will fetch the virtual network for you, and once you select that, it will show you the VM which is in that virtual network. All right. So it's showing me one VM because we had only one VM in that.
No, we have a two VM. One VM is already protected, so it
Oh,
is
okay.
only showing the unprotected VM.
Gotcha. Gotcha. All right.
Here you can select your target location where you want to replicate. I just selected the ASTS2, and here you can customize your resource group, network storage, and availability set.
You can change the name, otherwise by default it will create with dash ASR, all those names you want to change, you can create your own.
Yeah, or you can make it as per your organization standard name. You can provide those names over here. So which will be easy to,
Correct.
to
So
understand
you
your
can,
business.
yeah, you can have like, your project ATSR dash, DR1, DR2, like, those, and whatever naming convention your organization follow, you can follow those names.
But for that you need to create a resource group. Here you cannot type customize resource group. It will automatically create the resource group
But
by default name.
yeah, but can we use an existing one, right? We can always
Yeah,
use the existing one.
we can use.
Yeah, so we will create one resource group in the target, and then we'll, name that as per our naming convention, and we use that.
Okay. Then we need to select our network, then the target storage account, and the caching storage account.
Yeah, so
This VM is
just to recap, you specify your target resource group, and then, within that resource group, which VNet this VM will go and sit into, you specify that, and then you specify your target storage account. That's where, ultimately your storage account will get replicated to. And again, we talked about cache storage account. You remember, that's the delta. That's where the delta gets stored. So you select that cache storage account, and then finally you have availability set. Remember all these components we talked about in ASR architecture for Azure to Azure. So since you don't have, it looks like, any availability set. So
yeah, this VM is a not part of availability set, so here not showing target availability set.
Yeah, so that's why you don't see that. But
And Vivek, the cache storage is just work as a like a storage account, so we can select LRS, GRS, and other replication part too, right?
You can yes, you can select, but you cannot select the JRS, zone redundant.
yeah,
Okay.
zone redundant is, I don't think it's for VM. It's only for the blob storage, right?
Yeah, yeah, right.
Yeah, so Rukhsar, that's just a name given to its purpose. So that is also storage account, but its purpose is to act as a cache, as a dumping ground. That's why it is called cache storage. But it is a storage account.
Here by default replication policy is name 24-hour, recovery point retention 24 hours, and app consistency
So
frequency
so
4
how
hours.
how low we can go? Let's see. Let's look at
Create new.
yeah. So
Sorry,
this recovery point retention.
can I go back or continue here?
Yeah, you can continue.
Okay.
Yeah, you can continue, and then we can, reduce the hours and minutes.
Yeah.
Yeah,
How do
okay.
we do? Yeah.
Here the maximum is 72 hour. Like if you check,
So that's a maximum, right? So how about the
yeah,
minimum zero? Okay, that means
0
uh-huh. Zero means it will
0
not.
to 72.
Okay.
Yep.
Like I have just selected the 48 hours
Mhm.
and the frequency, app consistency frequency. Like you can create the app consistency point for 1 hour, 2 hour, 3 hour, or 4 hour.
Okay.
Sorry, but I need to create 24.
And to app consistency to work, it required the VM agent to be healthy, right?
Right.
Yeah. So even if app consistency, even if it's not working, even your AUM agent is not, or not healthy, the disk level replication will go. That's what just to mention here.
Yeah, and also if there is too much read-write operation going on your VM, then this app consistency point is not updated.
Yeah, then the actual replication or the DR situation will not arrive here. So make sure on going with always the VM healthy state, the agent healthy state on the replication, the configuring ASR VMs.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you then.
Sorry to interrupt you. So recovery point retention is different from the RPO and RTO, correct? So
Which recovery point? That is the recovery point retention
That's a retention.
for the
okay,
app consistency snapshot.
So this is
okay,
basically
So,
for how long it will retain. So it's saying it will
yeah.
retain for 24
So
hours.
basically that time, that 72 hours, so whatever the data or whatever the things you have, so it will recover the changes which is there for 72 hours. And the app consistency is something where your data is getting updated and your application is getting changed. So it will take within 1 hour when you just select the 1 hour, so it will take the one snapshot and keep in the cache. Okay. So it will just make sure that your everything would be updated. So when anything is goes wrong in your VMs or in Azure VMs which you have done, so it has the maximum data available for you to recover and do the failover.
Yeah, just to
Okay.
add what Lalit said. Yeah,
so we
just to
can
add
say,
what Lalit
so
said here.
can we say that this is the just minimum sync time or the replication time to the cache storage?
Yeah. So maybe Amit has a point to add on. Amit, please go ahead.
Yeah, so Lalit has correctly pointed to out the changed blocks on your applications. It's a live streaming or live synchronization. So the change block on your applications, that's where the delta is created and it goes to the cache storage accounts. That's where it decides at what point it will actually retain that, right? So this app consistency is to actually represent, because there is a question for the app consistency, is to represent the snapshots which would retain the changed blocks for these applications. Just like in a VSS snapshot, what happens is they are continuous change blocks. So it's redirected to a min-diff area, or you can say a cache. It's cached there in the OS, and that actually helps you to add that changed block along with the original block to keep the apps consistent. So that's the idea of the app consistency.
It's a VM quiz actually, what we call when the backup happens or the
Absolutely.
replication. Yeah, when the replication happens, it has to understand that I'm taking a replication. I have to tell that my application aware of that replication. So it squeeze that,
Right.
and no writes were put into the RAM. The inside the VM, the RAM data, and it will be squeezed, and it will the once the application constants happens, and it will release that. That's what it is actually, to aware the
Exactly.
replication on the OS level. Yeah.
Freeze and
Okay.
thaw would be the two processes it will happen, and it will do the capturing of that change block. Yeah, that's what
Yeah.
I think they said, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So now you can see that
Uh,
Vivek has enabled the replication, so you can see that saying the replication is in progress.
uh, yeah. Generally, the initial replication which takes time. No, Neeraj.
Yeah, it will.
Yeah. And here we have a scenario, right now what we are doing, it's we are taking a VM which is in say one region, and the in another region, but it is in the same umbrella of one subscription. Say right now Azure to Azure VM is recently released, but who are like previously using DR, yeah, active or active passive, like Ruksha said, they are in a different subscription. In that case, how the ASR, Azure to Azure ASR going to help actually? Just a query to answer to that. I've just figured out, if you have a different subscription, your current DR solution, you don't need to bring your like ARR or the NVA device which is in a DR to a new VNet in a same subscription, because ASR has a limits in the one subscription level, different regions. So, but right now you have a different subscription, different active DR. So if you want to bring it, create it in the primary location itself, a VNet, and there you create a VNet peering between your actual DR to your new VNet DR. So that will help you to ASR to use uh, and replicate the solution, and continue to use your existing DR traffic manager or ARR or the NVA devices to
Correct.
without recreation.
Yeah, so that's another good point. With global VNet peering, things will change dramatically. So, for
Yeah.
example, today if you really fail over and there is a question about the DNS, what happens to the DNS from pull cache and DNS configuration? Yeah, that's certainly when you fail over as a part of recovery services plan. So you can also create your own plan, which includes automation and a script which will make those DNS changes, IP changes at your DNS level, so that your in the DNS background. Let's say you're trying to resolve a name, now it will point to a different IP in the other region. So those is included in the recovery services plan. So that you can include in RSAP. Another question that you had is for the domain controllers. So for domain controllers, my advice would be don't use it as a DR from a perspective. But if you really want to have that in the other side, remember the entire site is down. Then you can use ASR. But if let's say you want to have active, you can set up another Active Directory site and have this replication setup. You can set up that one. So both the options. Remember, application level DR, your AD sites and services is your application level DR. Then you have on top of that your ASR. So you can have combination of these to achieve your RTO and RPO, or aggressive RTO and RPO.
Uh, just Neeraj, one more
Just to add,
thing.
Neeraj, just to add to Neeraj's point about domain control, is a very crucial point because people have this misconception. They are putting the domain controllers in high availability, and this is what used to happen in clusters also. People used to put them in the Hyper-V clusters earlier on as one of the VMs in high availability. But the moment that this domain controller used to go down, the entire cluster used to stop, and it doesn't go away. So that's one of the reasons, and we do not encourage encourage, and I have seen people, and while designing that, they don't encourage to put those domain controllers into any ASR activity, because you don't need it. All you have to do is get another domain controller up on the other side while you are actually moving the entire environment to that side. So that already takes care of the replication from the other part, the other domain controller. So it's always good to have an additional one instead of putting those domain controllers into any ASR. That I've not seen much of those things that really gives an extra edge or extra availability to any domain controller. It's obviously going to replicate with the other one. So we will have to plan in this way that we can have another one already set on the other side. Especially in SRM, we do that.
Yeah.
Okay, in the chat window, I have just pasted the support matrix. You can find out the limitation and the things where you need to take care before doing this Azure to Azure DR.
Um,
So
yeah.
I'm just go to the VM. Yeah, Uday, you are saying something?
No, I just want to,
Mhm.
the ASR will not help in like active DR scenario. Like some organization will have a requirement like they need the primary location and the secondary server to be always active, since their RTO and RPO will be very less and the most critical application. So in that situation, ASR would require different way of thinking, I would say. Right now, I don't see any objective of like active scenario running with ASR,
Correct.
where
So
they
in
have
a
active.
Yeah,
Yeah,
sorry. Yeah, and that's a very good point. So for active kind of very aggressive RT, you have to use a combination. That's what I said earlier. And in case of active, you can use Azure Traffic Manager to put on top of that, or you can use always on availability group with an external load balancer for SQL, and those kind of things you'll have to do it to achieve those active or high availability. Those are really not DR basically. There is a difference between DR and HA, right? Remember, DR
yeah,
incurs some downtime. It's a disaster. Entire region is down. Whereas high availability is if one node or two node goes down, I may still have highly available service. If one application instance goes down, I have another instance. So there is a very fundamental difference between highly available solution and DR capable solution. Yeah.
yeah.
Okay, so you can see here after enabling the replication, extension will install here in the VM blade.
Yeah, so it install the VM Mobility ASR VM Mobility extension. So and that's because of that extension only this the entire replication is taking place.
Okay, now we need to do the test failover. Like here the two option. Again, you can do using the single click when you go here, the disaster recovery preview. You can find the details here. Enabling the protection and the app consistent and crash consistent is not available because its replication is going on. So I'm just going to the recovery services vault. This is my vault just created. Go to the protected item, replicated item. Here you can see.
Yeah,
The replication.
yeah, it is still
Yeah.
doing a replication, but if you look at it on the top, you have something called test failover, right? So you can fail over the entire infrastructure using a test failover, wherein it will create a replica and then it will create an instance VM which is isolated. Then you can test those setting and all those, and then you can clean those up for you.
For that,
I
I
have a
have one.
question here for you. Sorry, I have a question here for crash consistency, right? So, at a point of synchronization, right? So, when we are replicating the stuff, so at the point in time, for example, any VM goes down in the middle of the synchronization. So, will there no, let's suppose that the synchronization is happening with the change blocks. Every day is changing. So, is there a possibility to get that to one up in the event of a DR on the other side? Maybe it may not go to that point, maybe a little earlier than the crash point of that VM. Is it possible?
Amit, Lalit here. So basically, once the complete replication is done, and then if something is goes down in between, then yes, you can always recover it. Until unless it is not completely replicated, it will not work. So it has to, the first initial sync has to be completed, and later
Right.
on, if you have updated something, then yeah, obviously you can. If the VM is goes down, then it has whatever the replicated data, and later on, if it is get down, then once that server will come up, it will start replicating. So till the time the replications or your data is available, the data would be available into your DR site as well.
So bottom line is that the initial replication has to complete before it happens, right?
Right.
Correct, correct.
So you cannot fail over, but if in between if your VM is goes down, the replication will start. Like if you have 100 GB of VM size, so you completed some 50 GB. So it will start from the 50 GB. It will not start from the beginning. It will start from the 50 GB. But failover will happen only once it is completed all the prerequisites and everything. Because it's just considered the application and everything would be on place and has to be properly configured.
All right.
Yeah.
So I see
Okay.
Vivek. Hmm? Go ahead.
Yeah, for test purpose, I has already created one VM and enabled the replication, and that VM is protected and replication health is okay. And one more thing, like when you create the enable the replication for the VM,
Mhm.
suppose in that time you have add the three disk of that VM, and what happened? It will just figure out the three disk of the VM, and you go to that VM. In the disk part, you will see all the disk here. If you add any additional disk on that VM, you will not able to see that disk here.
Oh.
That disk is not protected.
So can we enable that? Can we add the protection to additional disks? Is there a way to do that?
No,
No?
no, I think so. There is a no option.
Okay. So that means that either you have to break this replication and then have it
Yeah,
re-enable.
you need to create the re-enable the replication.
Okay.
Like for
Is
the
it not,
scenario, yeah.
Vivek, is it not that in the next replication that that the disk can be, auto understanding and auto
Correct,
discovery will
correct.
not,
Yeah, that
uh,
that was my question also. Because
because
eventually we are, yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah, go
go
ahead,
ahead.
Bon. Sorry, go ahead, go ahead, go ahead.
No, because we have a same solution because
Okay.
around the one umbrella of recovery vault, the Azure backup, which does the understanding of if I add the another disk when the initial replication happens and the another disk get added, in a future, that even understands and takes the backup. The same way the replication, should understand the disk as to, once we have a newly disk added, that should be understood. Maybe I'm just
Okay.
discovering this is from the backup. Yeah.
Okay, for the scenario, this is my VM which is already protected. In that VM, I have added one disk. That is the disk size is 10 GB. You can see here in the VM blade disk blade there is a one disk that is added on learn 0 and the size is 10 GB. If you go for the replication and that is the same VM, go to the disk. Here only the OS disk, not the data disk. So if you add the disk, that will not appear in the protection tab.
Hmm.
So you need to enable the replication
So
for that
basically,
VM.
yeah, you break
Well,
that and
to answer Uday's question here,
Okay.
when you add a disk for for a VM and the backup
Mhm.
does not recognize immediately, it has to be selected in order for the backup to capture the data on the new disk also, right? So the backup will identify it, but will not capture any data until unless it's actually asked to do so. Similarly, in this case also, there is in the protection group itself, because basically the storage which gets replicated all the time. So we would have to explicitly mention the number of storages that we can always do, and this has an advantage to it. If you see from the perspective, the economics of the Azure or Azure Site Recovery, it has an advantage to it, because then we can decide whether we need to actually move everything on it, or we can just leave out something outside and save something in terms of the storages on the other side also. So that is an advantage rather demerit in this scenario.
yeah, so yeah,
Yeah.
that's good. That's good point. So guys, let's complete the test failover, Vivek. I'm sorry to cut you in
Okay.
between, but we are half an hour above our allotted time. So let's complete the test failover. See.
You can, if you want to change the things again, you can go to the compute and network part. Here you can select the size of your VM and then the resource group, and there is a NIC, and you can select your subnet. Just go to the VM blade and click on test failover.
So the difference between failover and test failover is the failover is the actual one. Test failover is just a dummy one, which you can just see, for testing purpose, and then you can always clean it up.
Yes, basically the test failover just prerequisite before the final one. So your everything is set up or everything is correct. The settings and all would be there.
So
During the
here,
test failover, the
mhm,
primary VM will not be shut down, right?
right.
It won't be shut down.
That's correct.
Nothing will
It's
happen.
it's
Yeah,
it's similar
nothing will.
to a bubble network in SRM. If you guys have ever seen SRM in VMware, it's similar to what the simulation of failure it is done in a bubble network in SRM, where you can actually do a simulation and it creates a bubble network within which the complete infra that is supposed to be done with DR is actually erected in within that bubble, and it's isolated from the rest of the world. As a result, it does not interfere with the existing running VMs and just gives you a better idea how would it look like once it's moved over.
Yep.
Right.
So now you can see the recovery points, all the recovery points which was created. Then it will also ask you, the uh, the latest one. You can use the latest one, which is the lowest RPO. That's what you can. It is showing. Otherwise, if you want to go previous one, you can select the previous one or the custom.
You can here select the custom app consistency point.
Yeah.
So
So let's go with the latest. Yeah, and then you
yeah,
select the
okay, I have
VNet.
done that.
Yeah.
Yeah, selected.
Good. So, once you have done that, it will do the simulation. It will fail over the VM, but it will not touch your original VM. It will still be there up and running. And you can see that it's a progress. Prerequisite check was done. If you can go back, yeah. It's creating a test virtual machine, and then it will prepare a virtual machine, and then it start the VM. So this is where you can see the things in action. Rooks are, these VMs are creating when only with the test failover. So for example, if my failover has started just for, and I needed it for 24 hours, my DR site was needed, I'm only paying for 24 hours of compute time, as opposed to if I go with active or even active access in your case, my VM is running on both the sites all the time.
Okay, now just for check the process, go to the VM blade.
It actually gives me just gives an idea. Whether is it possible to move the VMs across to the other side to a VM scale set?
I think scale sheet is not supported by the Azure to Azure.
It's a good question, but probably I don't know. It's supported. I have not thought about it, but it's not
Even though
supported. I
still
don't
it
see.
is, uh, even though still it is in preview, so
Should
don't
go
think
there.
so. It is supported.
But maybe we can put this in a feedback to Microsoft in their feedback.azure.microsoft.com and then see what they have to say.
Virtual machine skill set not supported.
Yep, it's not supported. Availability set is supported.
Sorry, can I open that page?
No, I said availability set is supported, not the virtual machine
Yeah.
scale set.
So it's just creating a new machine with the same name, and it is test failover, so it just add -test.
All right. Yeah. So now it is preparing the virtual machine. So it created the test virtual machine. Now preparing the virtual machine, which means it's doing networking.
For the test failover, it's always create a new machine with name and the -test failover. Sorry, -test.
Okay. and then after that it will start that VM, and then you will be able to connect into the testing. And once that is done, you have option of cleaning it up, right? So you can clean it up afterwards.
One doubt here, just to we doing a test failover. When doing a test failure, the primary VM and the DR VM is both are active. If the VM which we are doing a failover test failover, that is in a domain, as soon as it brings into the network, the IP of the the DNS of the particular machine is going to change. So that in that case, test failover scenario is going to help actually. It will be issue for my current existing server.
Right,
Just
you're
to
right, Uday, because it's an isolation. It just is an added layer of isolation which makes sure that your test failure does not interfere with the existing running production
so
environment.
so yeah, yeah, that's Amit. So just to you while doing failover, I have to make sure my the connecting VNet or the failover VNet will not connect to my existing infra. So that's a failover scenario to make sure the application consistent or the backup
So
consistent
maybe
to
Uday,
working.
what you can do is you can also have as a failover, you protect your domain controller too, and then include the domain controller in the test failover.
Uh, yeah,
Yeah,
but
basic.
some situation. Yeah,
Yeah, Uday, basically, what is the test failover? It just, go ahead and check into the portal that whatever the servers and whatever the prerequisite which is running in the Azure background, that your VM is getting fulfilled or not. If anything is goes wrong or anything, it will just give you an alert. Okay, this
yeah.
because of this thing, so you cannot able to do the test failover. And one of the I was working with one of the customer, and when I just run the test failover, due to some disk issue or something, it just give me that you cannot able to create the VM because this issue has came. And then later on I realize, okay, yes, those are the issues, and then fix it, and then it work. So basically, the primary sites which we are going to failover, it has the different VNet, and the secondary site which is there, it has a different VNet. So automatically network is changed, and once you do the test failover, the VM name itself is getting changed, right? So it will not impact. But when you do the final failover, the test failover, then only it is going and doing something.
Okay. No, you
Okay.
mean to say when you do a test failover, sorry to cut you. When you're doing a test failover, that the VM which comes up, it comes with a new name?
Yes.
No, right?
No,
It
the
comes
host name
no
is the
into
same.
the test.
Host
No,
name
no,
is
Yes,
no,
Yeah,
same.
no.
host name.
Yeah, host name is same. Yeah. Sorry, the
The
name
yes,
host
the
name is
name
host.
in the
I
portal was different, but the host name is
Yeah, yeah. So, yeah, maybe lot what Lalit said, I think I would like to take the scenario. Maybe some customers will have a DR and the primary always connected. But in a Lalit scenario, DR and primary is not
disconnected.
connected with service level. So that scenario it worked for him. But in some situations, if DR and primary connects, then you put it into the the
See,
isolated VNet.
the thing is, test DR is only for test, right? It's not meant to interfere the
Yeah.
production. So what you can do is, if you really want to test in scenario, then include all the servers in your test failover. Just don't failover only the member servers. You know, if you
Yeah.
really want to test
Yeah.
with the domain controller, then also include that and the other work servers also.
Yeah, just to make that point clear, because someone if try to do the test failover, I just want to make them understand because it has to be in the isolated infra.
Yeah, yeah, it is isolated in front of the test failover. So now, I see that Vivek RDP'd into the test VM.
Yeah, that is working fine.
So, and we can see that, he was able to connect and he could see the name. Now he's going to show you the name. Both the VMs will have the same host name. The test one as well as the
Uh,
primary one.
the real one. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, here we don't have any connectivity between primary VNet to secondary VNet.
Yeah, because it's just a test.
Yeah, yeah. So
Yep.
Sorry.
So now you can see that both the VMs have the same name. The test one.
Can you, sorry, can you please check the disks which we were talking about on both of
Okay.
them?
Yeah. Okay. This is the test failover server, and only the C drive is there. No another drive. I go to the disk MGM. Let's see.
So this one, 183 is the source or target? I mean the
That is the target, the test failover machine.
test failure.
Yeah. And this is the primary machine, .88. You can check here.
Oh, yes, here you have the new volume. Yep, I can see F drive. Yep, it's there.
The screen is lagging a little bit here, so I'm not sure.
I can see it. I can see it. F drive is there. I can see the F drive.
Just give me a minute. Okay.
Yeah, so on the left side, which is the test one, you don't see the F drive. On the right side, which is the original one, you see the F drive.
Yeah, that brings the facility. We can select only the particular disk to only to replicate and do the DR activity, not to, like as Amit mentioned, not to do all the disk. So I don't need to do all the disk of my existing VM. Like 10 disk I have, I only have to do only the C drive and the particular application volume. So that gives me a flexibility to here. So
Yeah.
I think that's yeah.
Absolutely right, Uday. You're right.
Yeah.
So so was that defined somewhere during this process? Which disk to replicate?
It won't, right? It
So
won't. The by default, when we are taking a VM backup or VM is been allocated for a DR purpose, the entire VM goes over there. It is not in the initial time. If you added 5 disks to that VM, all 5 disks would be taken for the DR. After the first replication has been completed.
Sorry for it. Okay, go ahead. Please go ahead.
Yeah, after the completion of 5 disks replicated to the DR site, and if you are adding the 6th disk, that won't come up. That's what my understanding.
That's right.
It is not, you are not getting the flexibility to select, okay, I don't want the second disk to be replicated. You are not getting that flexibility.
Yeah, but I would say if there is this kind of a challenge, I would say if that backup facility doesn't have this kind of a facility, then it will be a challenge, because when I have one disk, I take a backup and I add later a second disk, but that doesn't come into the backup in the next cycle, then it will be a problem. But in a DR scenario, as a completely, we have to break it and recreate the DR.
Correct.
Yeah, that's a
so,
backup is the best option.
Yeah, just to add on to Ranjit. So Ranjit very summed up very correctly. So if you have 5 disks during the initial replication setup, all 5 disks will come. But if you add the 6th or 7th one, that will not be included in your replication.
And there is a reason behind it, and it's not only with this disaster recovery technology, but with other technologies also. They have a reason behind it, because it's DR and not just backup, where you keep backing it up every now and then, and you have restores available to do that. So there you can just select whatever you wish to. But this is a DR scenario where you actually choose the critical applications and not go just hell bent for all the servers that you have in your environment. So you have to choose the critical ones. You have to choose the ones that you really need to be on the other side, and probably you can just do away with the rest of them, which you may not be so critical for you.
All right.
And what happened? Okay, and what happened if you have a VM 5 disk or 6 disks, and you enable the replication, and first replication is done, and after that you remove the disk. Like now you have VM with the 2 disk, and when you do the test failover, it will display the VM with the 5 disk and the data of the 3 disk. It will the time when you remove the disk.
All right. So I think this completes the demo. Anything else that is pending? The cleanup. Yeah. So once you have done the test failover, you can click on the cleanup test failover. It will delete the resource group and everything, and the VNet and VM. Everything will be gone, and that will basically finish the test failover for you.
Neeraj, just a quick one. We are doing this for a single virtual machine. How about if we have hundreds of machine or complete site?
So you didn't look at it, right? So one click was for single VM, but for the way he has shown it for ASR, it will do for all 100 VMs, all at one go, one shot.
All right.
100 VM in the same resource group, in the same resource group, which is located in the same region or in the same site.
Correct. It's at the resource group level.
Multiple plans for for the number of machines if they're spread across resource groups, so probably you can have multiple plans for them, so you can execute them as per your requirement.
So just to bring the earlier question which somebody asked, if there is a VM which has 5 disks during the initial synchronization, then the admin removed 3 disks from that particular VM, what will happen?
You will get the 5 disk at the time of failover, but the data of uh, the 3 disk, like you remove the 3 disk at the time of 10:30 p.m. Whatever the data in replicated, that data will be there.
So that means at the destination location at any given point of time, when you restore that VM, you will have 5 disks with the initial or whatever the replication completed, the data would be always available, right?
Well,
Right.
Ranjit, you remember I asked this question about crash consistency, right? So it's
Uh-huh.
actually the same thing, the crash consistency at what till what time you will get it. So the way Lalit replied is the initial sync has to happen. After that, whenever this happens, so when anytime, I mean it's before that whatever they have will be recovered, but after that will not be recovered because you have lost it. So it's actually crash consistency that we're talking about here.
Agreed. My question is like the 3 disk which is already replicated would be always available. So you are getting a inconsistent data there, right? At the destination location, you have 5 disks, but in the actual location, you have only 2 disks.
Yeah, so Ranjit, so in
No,
that
it's
case,
it's
since your
please
administrator
go
has
ahead,
all,
Neeraj. Yeah.
yeah, since your administrator has already removed 3 days, that means your administrator doesn't care for, and you cannot expect the system to. So the system will only give you data of 5 days they are giving you. You don't want to use extra 3 days, please discard it and you just use for only 2 days. But you have still have the data which which was there during the initial sync. So at least you have something to rely on. You don't want
Absolutely.
you don't want to use it, it's okay. I mean you can just ignore those volumes.
Yeah. So that is also one thing which we need to keep in mind.
Yeah. I think we are 50 minutes past our allotted time. Every time we try to finish it up, within 1 hour, but it looks like. But right now, what you can see, the virtual machine got deleted after the cleanup. So uh, I think, yeah, it is cleanup. The test virtual machine is in progress. But anyway, I think with this, I think we complete our demo session. And I really want to thank you everybody for joining our session today, and we'll continue this journey again. And in next session, we're going to cover much complex scenario where we will try to replicate on-prem. That is, we're trying to arrange our VMware, and we'll try to replicate VMware from on-prem into Azure, and then we'll also do sessions for Hyper-V as well. So keep tuned, keep looking for our invite, and then if you have not signed up, please go on cloudeasy.com and sign up. You will receive a regular invite. So with that, I will take your leave, and thank you once again, gentlemen, for all of us joining. Thank you, Lalit, thank you, Amit, and thank you, Uday, and thank you, Vivek, for giving us a nice presentation and for making this worthwhile.
Thank
All
you.
right,
Thank you so
Thank
thank
you,
you,
much.
guys.
everyone. Have a great night.
All right,
Yeah.
bye.
Take care.
Bye.
Thank you, Vivek.